Have you ever trusted someone so much that you'd let them into your home, only to realize they were destroying it from the inside? My name is David, and I thought I had built the perfect life, 13 years of marriage, a beautiful house, and a future I believed was unbreakable. But one decision, one mistake shattered everything. I hired a driver to make our lives easier. Instead, I gave him the keys to my family and to my wife's heart. What followed was a storm of secrets, betrayal, and revenge you won't believe. And tonight, I'm going to tell you exactly how it happened. What if you saw your wife hugging another man in the car? Have you ever felt betrayal pressing down on you like a weight you couldn't lift? Not the kind from a movie, but the kind that shatters the walls of your own home. I was 36 years old, proud of everything I had built. Years of hard work gave me a family, a house, and what I thought was stability. I believed trust was the foundation of it all, until the day I realized how wrong I was. Emily, my wife, had convinced me to hire a driver. His name was Alex. He was polite, punctual, and seemed reliable. She said it would make our lives easier, no more rushing to work, no more late appointments. I agreed, never imagining the danger I was letting inside my own gate. At first, he was simply part of our routine. Then the small things started. Laughter that stopped when I entered the room. Her phone flipped face down on the table. The faint trace of perfume in his car, one I had never bought. One Friday evening, a package arrived. Inside was a plain envelope. And inside that envelope, a single key, my spare house key. With it, a note written in handwriting I knew too well. Don't be home early. I used to think trust was unshakable. You build it over years, brick by brick, and it stands tall like a fortress. But I learned that trust is smoke. It drifts, disappears, and leaves you gasping for air when you need it most. In the days after finding that key and note, I pretended nothing had changed. I carried my routines like armor. I kissed Emily on the cheek every morning, sat at the breakfast table, and asked about her plans. She smiled too quickly, laughed too loud. Alex stood near the door, polished shoes, crisp shirt, eyes lowered like he didn't exist. But I saw him. I saw the way his shoulders tensed when Emily entered the room. I saw the way her voice softened when she spoke to him, as if he were more than an employee. I couldn't confront them yet. My rage needed proof. Proof so solid it could never be denied. So I waited, I watched. And every second of silence burned like fire. At work, I stared at reports without reading a single number. My mind replayed small details: the perfume in Alex's car, Emily's sudden new dresses, her late-night showers. She used to fall asleep beside me, exhausted from long days. Now she stayed up scrolling through her phone, tilting the screen away. When I shifted, trust was smoke. Every time I reached for it, it slipped through my fingers. One evening, I told Emily I had to work late. I drove a few blocks away, parked, and walked back home in the dark. My own footsteps felt like thunder. Through the kitchen window, I saw shadows moving, 2 figures too close. My chest pounded, my throat dry, then laughter. Her laughter, the sound that once made me fall in love, now cut me like glass. But when I opened the door, only Emily was there. She looked startled but calm. "You're home early," she said, brushing her hair back. The living room was empty, spotless. Too spotless. Like nothing had ever happened. Smoke again. I grew paranoid. I checked Alex's schedule, his mileage, even receipts for gas. Everything seemed normal. That made it worse. Betrayal hides in the details you can't see. Days blurred into weeks. My anger grew teeth. I snapped at coworkers, ignored friends, even yelled at the TV. Emily noticed. "You're stressed," she said softly, rubbing my shoulder. "Work is wearing you down." Work? No, it wasn't work. It was the silence between us, the way her eyes no longer searched for mine. The way she answered my questions with half sentences. My wife was slipping away, piece by piece, and the driver I hired was taking her with him. One night I followed them. I told Emily I had a business dinner. Instead, I waited in my car near the restaurant she claimed she'd be. Hours passed. The restaurant emptied. No Emily, no Alex. Just smoked out. The breaking point came on a Wednesday. I left the office earlier than usual, heart hammering, palms sweaty. I told myself it was just to surprise her with flowers. A simple gesture. But deep down I knew. When I reached home, Alex's car was parked at the curb. The lights inside glowed, soft and warm. I stood outside, frozen, staring at my own front door. The place that had once been my sanctuary now looked like a stranger's house. I stepped inside quietly. Voices drifted from the living room, hers low and sweet, his deep and hesitant. I couldn't make out the words, but I felt them. Felt the betrayal echo in every syllable. I dropped the flowers. They hit the floor with a soft thud. The voices stopped. A chair scraped. Emily appeared in the hallway, hair tousled, cheeks flushed. "You're home," she whispered, not smiling. Behind her, Alex's shadow moved. Smoke, always smoke. That night I didn't sleep. Emily curled beside me, pretending everything was fine. Her breathing was steady, but I heard the lie in every inhale. My mind screamed, proof. I needed proof. So I bought a small camera. One I could hide on the bookshelf in the living room. Another near the side gate. I told myself I didn't want to be this man, sneaking, recording, spying in my own home. But betrayal changes you. It makes you desperate for clarity. Days turned into a cruel waiting game. I checked the footage obsessively. Hours of nothing. Just Emily reading, Alex driving, silence. But then came Friday. On Friday, I saw Emily walk in through the gate, smiling. Alex followed. She touched his arm lightly, too lightly to mean. Nothing. They laughed, leaning close. The camera caught their faces relaxed, intimate, like lovers hiding in plain sight. My heart shattered, but I kept watching. She poured wine. They sat on the couch, too close. Her hand brushed his knee. He didn't move away. He leaned in. And then her lips met his. The world stopped. My fists clenched, nails digging into skin. My breath came in short gasps. Proof. Finally, undeniable proof. And yet, I felt no victory. Only emptiness. The fortress of trust I had built collapsed into ashes. I didn't confront them that night. Instead, I carried the images in my chest like burning coals. I smiled at Emily during dinner, asked about her day, and nodded while she lied. Every word she spoke was smoke. Every glance she gave me was poison. Inside, I planned, but before I could act, I needed to hear from you. If you were me, if you found the proof, if you watched the person you love betray you in your own home, would you confront them immediately? Or would you wait and plan something bigger? Tell me in the comments, because I need to know how others would survive this storm. The following week was torture. I went to work, sat at my desk, and felt like a ghost. People spoke around me, but I only heard Emily's laughter on the tape. I only saw Alex's hand on her knee. At night, I pretended to sleep. I listened to her breathing, steady and calm, while my chest ached with rage. I wondered if she knew I had discovered the truth. Maybe she sensed it in my silence. Maybe she saw it in the way I avoided her eyes. One evening, she reached for my hand at dinner. "You've been distant," she said softly. "Is something wrong?" Everything. Everything was wrong. But I only smiled and said, "Work's been heavy." She nodded, eyes clouded, lips pressing into a thin line. And in that moment, I realized she wasn't mine anymore. She was his. Still, I waited. I needed the right moment. Betrayal deserved more than a confrontation. It deserved justice. So I gathered more footage. More nights of laughter, wine, touches too intimate to ignore. Each file I saved felt like a blade I was sharpening. Each lie she told became fuel for the fire inside me. And yet, part of me grieved. I remembered our first date, the way she spilled coffee on her dress and laughed instead of crying. I remembered the vows we exchanged, the promises of forever. I remembered her hand squeezing mine when life felt impossible. That woman was gone. In her place was a stranger sharing my bed. The trust that once defined my marriage had turned to smoke. I couldn't hold it, couldn't breathe it, couldn't live with it anymore. I stared at the footage one last time. Emily and Alex sitting, close whispering. My wife, my driver, my betrayal. I closed the laptop. My decision was made. This wouldn't end in silence. This would end with fire. I once believed betrayal was a whisper, something that could still be denied if you closed your eyes. But when proof finally arrives, it doesn't whisper, it screams. It claws into your chest and leaves marks that never fade. For weeks, I lived in silence. I carried the videos on my laptop like a secret wound. Every smile Emily gave me, every word she spoke, was poisoned by what I had seen. She thought she was clever. She thought dim lights and careful whispers would hide the truth. But the truth does not hide. It waits, it rots, and then it explodes. I kept gathering more evidence. Each night, the cameras gave me new fragments of betrayal, her hand brushing his lips close to hers, laughter that belonged to lovers, not strangers. I archived every file, labeling them by date. I didn't even know why anymore. Maybe I thought someday someone else would need to see them. Maybe I needed the files to convince myself that I wasn't imagining things. The final blow came on a Saturday afternoon. Emily told me she was visiting her sister. I kissed her forehead, nodded, and watched her drive away. Then, hours later, the side gate camera lit up. Emily returned. Not alone. Alex walked behind her, carrying a grocery bag. They slipped inside, moving with the ease of people who had done this before. My hands trembled as I opened the video feed. They went straight to the living room. Emily poured wine. Alex sat comfortably on the couch, his arm draped along the back as if he owned the place. And then she joined him. Their lips met in full daylight. No hesitation, no guilt, no fear. My wife, the woman I had promised my life to, pressed herself against the man I paid to drive her. The proof was no longer fragments. It was complete. It was undeniable. I stared at the screen, paralyzed. I wanted to smash the laptop. I wanted to scream until my throat tore. But instead, I sat in silence. Silence heavier than any sound. That night, Emily came home hours later, smiling, humming softly as she placed her purse on the table. She kissed me on the cheek, tasting of wine, and asked about dinner. I answered calmly. Inside, my soul was burning. She didn't know that I knew. She didn't know that every glance I gave her carried the weight of evidence. Irrefutable proof. The following days became a performance. She played the part of the loving wife. I played the fool who believed her. But the truth sat between us. At every meal, an invisible guest neither of us could ignore. I studied her carefully. Did she notice the way my hands shook when I lifted a glass? Did she see the darkness in my eyes when she laughed at my jokes? Or had she convinced herself that lies could build a stronger foundation than honesty? At work, I was a ghost. My coworkers asked if I was ill. I told them I was fine. How could I explain that my life had collapsed? That proof had turned my marriage into ashes? One evening, I returned home early again. Alex's car was gone, but the house smelled faintly of cologne. Not mine. The scent lingered in the hallway, clinging to the air like smoke. I walked into the bedroom. The bedspread was wrinkled, the pillows out of place. Emily appeared moments later, startled, her face pale. "You're home early," she said. Always those words. I looked at her, saying nothing. She bit her lip, then smiled nervously. "I was just resting." Resting. The word scraped my ears raw. The more proof I collected, the more hollow I became. It was no longer about betrayal alone. It was about survival. I couldn't live like this, carrying video after video, memory after memory. I had to act, but how? Should I confront her alone, shoving the laptop in her face until she cried? Should I drag Alex into the living room and expose them both at once? Or should I wait, bide my time, and let the world see what they had done together? The questions ate me alive. Nights passed with me staring at the ceiling, fists clenched, jaw tight, imagining every possible outcome. One night, I dreamed of fire. The house burning, Emily screaming, Alex pounding on locked doors. I woke drenched in sweat, shaking, horrified by my own mind. Betrayal does not just wound, it transforms you. It drags you into shadows you never wanted to visit. Still, I knew. I couldn't destroy myself. I needed control. I needed to plan. So I copied the videos to a separate drive. I printed screenshots of their embraces, their kisses, their laughter. I tucked them into a folder. Irrefutable proof, tangible, undeniable. I was ready, but fate is cruel. The very next day, Emily handed me her phone by mistake. She had meant to pass me her old one to charge, but she gave me her current phone instead. She went to the kitchen while I plugged it in. And then I saw it. A message from Alex. Short, simple, impossible to ignore. Last night was perfect. Can't wait to see you again, I scrolled. There were dozens more. Hidden under a fake contact name, but not well hidden enough. Messages of longing, of lust, of promises whispered in secret. She had given herself to him not just in body, but in words, in emotions, in ways I thought were mine alone. I dropped the phone on the table, my pulse hammering. Proof in her handwriting, proof in her choices. There was no smoke anymore. Only fire. That night, I didn't confront her. I waited, folder hidden under my desk, phone screenshot saved. I wanted the perfect moment. I wanted the betrayal to be revealed not in whispers, but in echoes. She walked into the bedroom wearing the necklace I had given her years ago. She smiled as if nothing had happened. And I stared, wondering how many times she had worn that same necklace while kissing another man. Inside, I broke. But on the outside, I stayed calm. The proof gave me clarity. I no longer doubted myself. I no longer questioned whether I was imagining things. I knew the betrayal was real, and it was deeper than I ever feared. The man I trusted to drive my wife had driven her straight out of my life. The woman I vowed to love had traded forever for secret moments behind closed doors. And now, the evidence was mine. Irrefutable, inescapable, unforgivable. I stared at the folder one last time, tracing the edge with trembling fingers. I whispered to myself, "This ends soon." And for the first time in weeks, I felt calm, not because the pain was gone, because I had decided what must come next. Vengeance is not born in a moment. It grows quietly like a seed watered with betrayal. It takes root in silence, spreads through sleepless nights, and waits for the right season to bloom. By the time I was ready, it was no longer an impulse. It was a necessity. I had the proof. I had the images, the videos, the messages. The betrayal was carved into my reality. But revenge is not only about truth, it is about timing. I wanted them to feel what I felt: humiliation, exposure, and the weight of every lie they thought was hidden. So I chose a day that mattered, our anniversary. The day meant to celebrate trust and love would become the day I tore their illusion apart. Emily dressed carefully that morning. She wore the blue dress I had once told her was my favorite. She smiled shyly, pretending excitement for a dinner she thought would honor our years together. I kissed her cheek, steady, hiding the storm beneath my skin. I booked a private room. At the restaurant, I told her, "Family and friends will be there. It'll be special." Her eyes sparkled. She believed me. She still thought she could live two lives, The loyal wife in public, the lover in secret. But secrets don't survive sunlight. The room was set perfectly. A long table, candles flickering, family gathered in anticipation. My parents sat near. The head, Emily's sister across from them, close friends scattered along the sides. Everyone was ready to toast love. And then Alex arrived. I had invited him under the pretense of needing his help with transportation for guests. He walked in wearing his pressed shirt, nervous but composed. When his eyes met Emily's, I saw it a flicker, too quick for anyone else to catch. But I caught it, because I had been watching for months. The dinner began with laughter. Glasses clinked, food was served, conversation flowed. Emily played her role flawlessly, touching my arm, leaning close, smiling at the right moments. To everyone else, we looked perfect. But beneath the surface, the truth writhed like a serpent ready to strike. Halfway through I stood, my voice cut through the chatter. I'd like to say a few words. The room quieted. Emily looked at me with pride, expecting a declaration of love. Alex lowered his gaze, sipping his drink. I smiled, calm, steady. Marriage is built on trust, I began, on honesty, on respect. Tonight, I want to share what those words mean. In our lives, I reached under the table and pulled out the folder. The same folder I had guarded like a weapon. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't falter. I opened it, laying out the photographs. Emily's laughter froze in her throat. Alex's face drained of color. Around the table, gasps spread like wildfire. This, I said, holding up an image of Emily and Alex kissing, is what my marriage has become. The silence was suffocating. My mother covered her mouth. Emily's sister whispered her name in disbelief. Emily reached for the photo, desperate, her hands trembling. It's not, she started, but I cut her off. Don't lie, I said, louder now. Not tonight, not in front of them. Every word you speak is already disproven. I have the videos, I have the messages, I have everything. Her face crumpled. Tears welled, spilling onto her cheeks. Please, she whispered, not like this. Alex stood abruptly, stammering. I never meant, sit down. My voice cracked like a whip. He obeyed, shoulders slumping, shame painting his skin. Around us, the room buzzed with disbelief. Friends whispered, relatives shook their heads, eyes wide in shock. But I wasn't finished. For months, I have eaten dinner beside a stranger, I continued. For months, I have kissed a woman whose lips belonged to someone else. For months, I trusted a man who was sleeping with my wife under my roof. The words spilled out sharp and deliberate, each one a blade cutting through the facade. Emily sobbed openly now, mascara streaking her face. I'm sorry, she choked. I was lost. It was a mistake. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. A mistake happens once. What you did was a choice. Again and again, the tension was unbearable. My father rose halfway, as if to calm me, but sat back down when he saw my resolve. I wasn't out of control. I was precise. I turned to Alex. You were paid to protect, to serve. Instead, you stole. You used my trust as a weapon. He lowered his head, unable to meet my gaze. This is the man I welcomed into my home, I said to the room, and this is the woman I thought I knew. The shame was complete. Their secret was ashes now, scattered in front of everyone who mattered. I gathered the photos, sliding them back into the folder. My voice softened, but the steel remained. This marriage is over. Tonight, you both leave. My life, I will not raise my glass to lies. I placed the folder on the table and walked away from the head seat. The room erupted in murmurs, chairs scraping, emotions raw. Emily called after me, her voice breaking. Please, we can fix this. I stopped, turned, and looked at her one last time. Trust can't be fixed once it turns to smoke. The rest of the night blurred. I remembered faces shocked, sympathetic, judgmental. I remembered Emily's sobs echoing in the hallway. I remembered Alex leaving quietly, shoulders hunched, as if shrinking under the weight of his disgrace. But what I remembered most was the silence that followed me home. For the first time in months, I felt light. Not happy, not healed, but free. Revenge had not erased the betrayal. It had not rebuilt my trust. But it had given me back my dignity. I sat in the dark of my empty house, folder on the table, untouched. I didn't need to watch the videos again. The world had seen enough. They had witnessed the truth. And Emily had felt the pain of exposure. The same pain she had given me, that was enough. Scars don't appear overnight. They form slowly after the bleeding stops, when the wound finally accepts it cannot be whole again. That was me after the night of vengeance. My house was quieter, my bed colder, my heart heavier. Yet beneath it all, I felt something I hadn't in months. Peace. Emily left the next morning. She packed in silence, her eyes swollen, her voice gone. She tried once, whispering, "Please, don't do this." But even she knew it was over. Alex never came back. I heard through neighbors that he quit his job and moved away. Cowardice was his final act. I stood at the window, watching her car disappear, and I realized the truth. Vengeance doesn't restore what's broken. It doesn't rebuild love. It doesn't erase betrayal. But it shines light on the darkness. And once light enters, lies can no longer survive. The days that followed were brutal. Mornings without her voice. Evenings without her presence. I caught myself setting 2 plates at the table, then shoving one back angrily. I scrolled through old photos, her smile, our vacations, the vows we once spoke, and felt torn between mourning and rage. But with time, the fire cooled. The silence that once felt suffocating began to feel like freedom. I could breathe without wondering whose perfume lingered on my couch. I could sleep without questioning who she was texting. I could live without smoke clouding every corner of my life. Friends called, offering sympathy. Some praised my strength. Others whispered that I had been too harsh. But none of them lived in my skin. None of them carried the weight of that betrayal. Only I knew the cost, and only I could decide the price to be paid. And here's what I learned. Trust, once shattered, never returns the same. You can glue the pieces together, but the cracks remain, visible under every light. I chose not to live with cracks. I chose to walk away. One evening, I sat alone on the porch, the sun sinking low, painting the sky in shades of fire. I thought of Emily. I thought of Alex. I thought of the man I had been before all this. And I whispered to myself, that man is gone. But I am still here. Scars do not mean weakness. They mean survival. If you are listening now, maybe you have lived something similar. Maybe you felt the sting of betrayal or carried the ashes of broken trust. If you have, know this. You are not alone. Pain carves us, but it also shapes us. Betrayal burns, but from the ashes, strength can rise. Would I undo what happened if I could? Perhaps, but then I would still be blind. I would still be living a lie. Now I live with truth. Painful, permanent truth, but truth nonetheless. So here is my question for you. If you were in my place, would you have done the same? Would you have exposed them, made them face the shame they created? Or would you have chosen silence, burying the truth to keep appearances? Tell me in the comments. Your story, your voice, might help someone else who feels lost in the same storm. My scars remain, they always will. But they remind me that I survived, that I walked through fire and came out standing. And as I close this chapter of my life, I offer you this final thought. Trust is fragile. Guard it, respect it, and never take it for granted. Because once it turns to smoke, it never becomes solid again. What would you do in this situation? Leave your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more true stories, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it.